Hey, this is Chaser Crouch, and you're listening to Texas Toast Podcast.
Quick shout out to our friends over at Release Rocket. Don't let your single die after release day. Release Rocket's the best way to keep your single or album alive and growing. These guys will custom tailor a strategy to make sure you get the most out of your music. Head over to releaserocketmedia.com to learn more.
So let's go.
Cheers, everyone. Welcome to the Texas Toast Podcast. I'm your host, Miss Helen. Oh, I think we say that in the beginning of this. I'm Miss Helen, and welcome to Chaser Crouch. Well, I think we got this figured out, Chaser. Welcome to the podcast. And it's a great time to have you on. Your new single, Houston, We Got a Problem, is doing amazing on Out to Texas Radio with the charts and Song of the Week. We'll talk more about that. But I'm impressed with you with all the accolades that you have in your younger years. 2020, you were inducted in the Nashville Cutting Horse Association Youth Hall of Fame. You've done some high school rodeo stuff, but mainly cutting horses. But you also worked in your talent with all the achievements you had with the cutting horse competition. So let's talk about that whole career.
Well, as far as the horses, it's just one of those things. I grew up in it, so it was either do it or sit on the sidelines and watch it, and I don't like sitting on the sidelines, so I jumped right in. And for the longest time, I didn't really want to ride a horse. I didn't care to ride a horse. I was a big baseball kid. I loved playing baseball. I was in all the select ball teams and all that. And but I was still going to horse shows every single weekend with my parents, and I'd sit there on the fence and watching all my friends show. And finally, at one point, I was just like, okay, I've had enough of this. All my buddies are showing. They're getting to talk about how good they did this day, and I could see them bonding together, and I was just kind of fading out. And I'm like, no, I'm getting right in there. And I remember the day I told my parents, I was like, I think I'm gonna haul for the world. And that's when you're hauling, you're going every single weekend, and you're showing every weekend, every chance you get. A lot of late nights, a lot of driving, and they laughed at me. It was funny because I've
Really?
never really been interested in it. And it was always in my backyard. It was like, okay, like, yeah, I'm riding a horse, I'm okay. And when I finally told them, they looked at me, you got to actually show a horse, right? And I said, yeah. It's like every weekend. I'm like, yeah, I got it. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go for it. I'm gonna win the world. And they laughed at me. And sure enough, that year, that very first year that I got serious about it and started showing, I ended up getting reserve in the world, and I believe that was the year that we set the record for the most points ever earned in one show season for the youth. And it was
Whoa.
like I was battling it out against one of my friends who had already won the world one time, and she was a year or two older than me, and we were neck and neck. I mean, right? I think I lost it by 1 point, but it was a wild ordeal. It was fun. I missed it. And then of course I went on to high school rodeo, showed national high school final rodeo. I went there up in Wyoming 4 years in a row, and out of the 4 years that I went, I won it 2 of the years. And one of the cool things about that was, so when you go like a state, so you got Texas and stuff, they go up to high school nationals as a team. So like you're competing as a team against all the other states. So you got awards for the state. Each state can win an award, and then you got your individuals winning championships and stuff. Well, out of all the 4 years that I went, Team Texas won all 4 years, and it was actually, we had lost our streak. In my freshman year, we got the streak back and won Texas back the title, and then we kept it for all 4 years. And I think we're going on 8 years now that we've held the title in our hands, of 8 consecutive years of winning it out of Team Texas. But with that high school rodeo and going up there to Wyoming every summer, showing there, it's one of the coolest things you can do. There's so many kids out there. 16 or 1,800 kids in one spot, all high
Mhm.
schoolers from freshmen to seniors.
Yes.
And there's golf carts all over the place. All the kids
Hmm.
run golf carts late in the night. I mean, it can be a wreck, but it's a lot of fun.
I'm very familiar with that, but also there's a lot of work and a lot of discipline.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. It was. I believe one of my year actually. I think all 4 years that I was at nationals, we the day that nationals ended
Mhm.
and they did the awards, and 2 days later was when our world finals for the NYCHA was starting up in Fort Worth, Texas.
Wow.
So it was pretty much a drive overnight from Gillette, Wyoming, or Rock Springs, wherever we were at the time, and pretty much drive through the night to get to Fort Worth. And you get to Fort Worth in just amount of time to go get your meetings done for the NYCHA, and
Mhm.
then get everything figured out, checked in, and then show the next day. And it's a lot of stress on it. It's
Yeah, it
yourself,
is.
and I mean even your horses. I mean throwing them in a
Mhm.
trailer after they
Yes.
had you know have throw down three really good runs, and then you throw them in a trailer and haul them 24 hours or 20 hours back to Texas just to pull them out of the trailer again and have three more runs. And I got lucky with my horse that I had, and I still have her. She's out there in the barn. I rode her the other night.
Oh, that's awesome.
Go her every now and then, but that she was my baby. That's what I showed for the 5 years that I hauled, and I hauled for 5 years. I mean, in a row. Each year, it just as soon as the season was stopped, we jumped right back going again.
Well, that is super impressive, and I know how much work and discipline goes into that. And so, congratulations on that. So, when you were doing all this, were you singing at the time? Because I know you did participate in a talent show. I saw that on some of the backstory about you.
I did. So for National High School Finals Rodeo up there, they actually have a talent show that you have to send in like a recording and stuff, and they go through and pick out. I think they pick like 20 people or something, and I made it into the talent show. I think I played the talent show all 4 years that I was there, and I never won the talent show. I always somebody else would always get me, but one of the years, I think it was my senior year, I believe. I played "Beer Never Broke My Heart," and everybody loved it, but everybody's like, I don't know, the judges are really liking the song selection for the high school crowd, but I was like, hey, it's a good song. Everybody liked it. I had everybody singing along and clapping, and it was a good time. And then, of course, at back in Fort Worth or NYCHA events, we'd always have they had a little talent show and stuff, and I was always playing in it. And then all my buddies, we'd all gather around in a circle out by the trailers in the parking lot everywhere I went and play.
Hmm.
Buddies that play, and we just sit there on the fire and by the trailer and play all night long.
Wow, that's a great transition into talking about your music. You've got a lot going on. You also, I did see you last year at Texas Live when you were a part of the Future Faces, a T3R show. And I do believe you came through the media center. I think you and I did have a chance to visit. I was impressed. That was such a great show. What was that like for you being able to perform for the Future Faces show?
Uh, it was pretty nerve wracking, honestly. I'm not one to really get nervous, even through all the years that I was showing. Like I rarely got nervous, but being in front of, well, I know like all the musicians and everybody a part of music is there,
Yes.
and having to play in front of them, and then with the people I had up on stage, Ryder Grimes, Olivia Harms, and all them. I mean, having being up there sharing the stage with them was really a little bit nerve wracking. I really felt like the underdog going into it, and I had a blast. It was a lot of fun. I met a lot of great people.
Lots of fun. Well, I couldn't tell. I watched the whole thing. I thought everybody did great, but there was there was some great talent. up there. And that's
Yes, ma'am.
that's the whole that's a great thing about having you on the podcast too, because we want everyone to get to know you because you are a future face in our Texas country music, and you've already had so much success. Your first radio single, Hell of a Night, did good for you. And let's talk about, I mean, that song just sets you up for fun. Back roads, cooler, full of bad ideas. You had me at those lyrics on that song when it came out. So talk to me about that song and it and how it felt for that being your first radio release.
Well, that song, it was, I really never had any intentions of releasing it or recording it or even people had to beg me to go and get it recorded because I love the song, but I just didn't know if that was the kind of song that I wanted to release as a first one.
Okay.
Uh, it was written here at Navarro College back. This was before I was even going to college, but I hung out with all the college kids at Navarro. Navarro has got one of the biggest John Deere like training facility for like John Deere mechanics. So like I was buddies with all the John Deere boys that were there.
Is amazing.
They have their own like dorm and everything off campus. So I'd always go over there and hang out. And one night we were out there, and it was the wee hours of the morning, and one of my buddies had a guitar, and one of my other buddies was like, "Let's write a song." I was like, "Okay," and we just started writing it, and got about half of it done, and a little bit later I finished the rest of it. Everybody loved it. I wasn't sure how I really liked it, but they wanted me to record it, and I did, and I couldn't be more happy in how the song's done. I mean, it was for a first release. I had people telling me it's like don't expect to get anywhere close to like the top 100s or whatever, or close to the charts. And I want to say it got pretty close. I mean, it was decently close to the charts. That I mean, close enough that I was happy with it. I mean, I was like,
Hmm.
wow.
Yeah, and then so I know that then FM station came out, and I know that David Gilligan's a big buddy of mine, and so I know that David's been working real closely with you, and he's your radio promoter. Let's talk about Houston. We got a problem. He sent that over to me, and it's just I mean, it's just a killer song. It's just epic, and it's just like all of your stuff is good, but there was just something standing out. Like maybe it's more maturity with that particular single, but congratulations on the success with it being named Song of the Week for Texas Country Music Chart and also the Texas Country Music Magazine. So what are you thinking? How's it feeling with all the success of that single?
Oh, it's I mean, it's unreal. Like I said, I never thought that I would be in this spot. When I was little growing up and playing music, I always thought it'd be cool to be a part of it, but I never really thought I'd be a part of it. It's one of those things that it was cool, but it seemed so far fetched at the time. And looking back, there and now, it's like heck, it's pretty wild to think. Especially just these past 2 years, how far we've come. And then, Houston, we got a problem. I picked that song up. My producer actually picked it up for me out of Nashville.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Michael Clute, my producer, and he picked it up for me from Nashville, and it was written by Stephen Bogart and Taylor Davis. And when I got to hear that song, I was like, that's pretty good. Like it fits. And what my favorite part about it that stood out is like it talks about places around where I
Yes.
live,
Mm-hmm.
Waco, Abilene, Houston, all that. I mean, I've been I go to all those places pretty frequently, and it just Waco's heck 45 minutes west of me. So I mean, I'm right here around it all. So when I heard those lyrics, I was like, okay, this just sounds like me. Like it fits.
Yes.
And the storyline of it with you got this girl that you grew up in a small town, and he likes the smaller things, gravel roads or dirt roads, whatever, riding around, seeing the stars, and he thought she was a small town girl and liked those things until they went to the city together, and turns out she likes the big city lights and all the paved roads and
Yes.
more than she likes being in the country, and it just wouldn't work. I completely understand that because you know I could not live in the city. I do not like the city. I don't like the paved roads. The only thing I like about the cities is stockyards. I love going to the stockyards.
Yes, yes.
That as much as I, like to go into the city, and I like the city lights every now and then. But if I had to choose, I'd rather be out in the middle of a pasture looking at the stars or sitting on a back road somewhere.
I'm with you on that. I'm a coastal girl. I live the salt life, but I call it I call it I got to get away from the concrete. There's too much concrete.
Hmm.
Just
Yeah.
when I
No,
have to go into Houston for things, Kyle knows I'll say, well, too much concrete for me, too many headlights. I'm glad I'm back home. It's nice to take a trip and get away, but oh my gosh, please get me back home.
can't. Every time I drive through Houston, I can't stand it. And of course, I got a big dually pickup, and it's
Mm-hmm.
fun to navigate through the traffic half the time. And when we go down there to the Houston Sock Show and pulling trailers through there, you just
Yes.
before you even get there, you're ready to turn around and go home.
Well, and back in the old days, there was so many back roads you could take, but everything's so developed now. Like you could get off on a farm market road. I mean, I knew all kind of shortcuts and back ways to get into Houston. Eventually, you do have to get on, like if you're going to well, back then the Astrodome, or when you're going into NRG, but you eventually do have to get on the interstate. But man, I could take some back roads that could get me as close in as I could get to the loop and then shoot over. But now it's all concrete.
Yeah, no,
It's all developed.
city. That's all it is. There ain't no back roads around there anymore.
No, it's so sad. I love back roads. Okay, I want to talk to you also. I did have Michael Clute on my notes. What I guess my question about Michael is what was the difference from your prior recordings to when you went into the studio and then Michael produced you?
Well, so I worked with Michael on the past two songs. Houston, we got a problem, and FM station. Yeah, but yeah, I think that's right. I drew a blank for a second there, but it's just he's. Oh, we get along together really well, and he has a little bit of that. He's been in Nashville forever. I mean, he did a lot of stuff out in Nashville, knows a lot of people out
Oh
there,
yes.
and it was kind of a little collision at first because I love Nashville, but I still, and most people can agree with me, I feel like, but I love Nashville, but I love Nashville for what it is and what it's done in the past. I'm not too thrilled about what it's doing and now and is turning into.
Mhm.
Um, I think they kind of lost a little bit of the track of the roots for a little bit, but and that's no, I mean, I like a lot of some of the music that comes out of Nashville. I'm just not the biggest fan of it. I like the classic stuff a little bit better,
Right.
but no, working with them, it was great. I mean, he really like helped me. We stayed in the studio like all day, and I mean, I would go over things multiple times, and every take might be good, but
Hmm.
it really kind of forced me to like try singing it like this, try singing it like that. Hold this word out a little bit more, say this phrase a little faster, and he just really worked with me, and I think he really improved me as a musician and just singing and vocally and just made the recording so much better.
And that's the thing that David told me about him that was such an advantage for the musicians that are going to work with him. Another story I want to cover. It's so interesting. I love some of these stories when we interview some of our artists, and some of our bands have really interesting stories on how they were formed. I want to talk about three: the Guitar Center and your band coming together, the guys in your band.
Oh, that's a funny one. Uh, so I met these guys several months before I even like really kind of like talked to them about getting a band together. And I was actually getting ready for a deal in my hometown, and we had a rehearsal for it. And I broke my Takamine that I had that I've been playing forever. I broke a little part on it, so I couldn't hook it up to a sound system.
Mhm.
And so I'm rushing around. Like the next day, I load up and I go to Guitar Center. I mean, I find the nearest Guitar Center to me, which is an hour away. and haul butt up there, go in and make sure they have the part first. But they luckily it was like one of the only places that did. Went up there to buy the $10 part, and then got to looking around, and ended up walking out with a brand new Taylor 814. And the whole time, it's funny because my guitarist is the one that sold me the guitar, who I talked to the most while I was there. And we always joke around about it because when I was buying that Taylor, I paid for most of it in cash, from just like gigging money that I had saved up. I paid for most of it in cash, and then put a little bit on my card and stuff. But we're counting out. I think we had like $2,000 laying there across the table in like 20s and tens, and there's
Oh,
like maybe one or two 50s here and there. So like everybody's at the stores looking over there laughing, thinking a drug deal's going on. And we're sitting there counting this money out so I can buy this
love it.
guitar. And anyways, as we're doing that, this boy starts picking on my guitar a little bit. And we get to talking about how, he plays lead guitar and rhythm and all that. And I was like, well, I'm looking for a band. Could I get mind if I get your number in case I ever need a guitarist? I can holler at you when I get to that point. He's like, yeah, no problem. So I got his number. Never messaged him or said anything. And I think it was a couple months later. I had some people ask me about a gig that they wanted a full band and were wondering if I could get one together. And I was like, yeah, I'll see what I can do. So I texted him. I was like, hey, you got a bass player and a drummer? He's like, yeah, I know him. He's like, let me call him real quick. I was like, okay. So he called him and called me back. He called me back and he goes, yeah, when do you want to meet him in practice? I was like, well, I guess we'll do it Friday. So I went up there and met him. And the coolest part about it was, is I walked in before we even started playing. Like I walked in, we talked for a little bit. And like one of the first couple of things I said, I looked at him, I was like, look, I don't know what y'all's plan is, if y'all just want to stick with me for this one little show here. But if we like it, I need a band, and that's my next step. And if you're in for it and you'll go and you'll follow me and support me with it, I think I can take us places. I was like, I don't know for a fact, but this is what I got going for me, and this is what I got. This is what I'm gonna do. So it's either all or nothing for me, and I'm gonna go for it. So if you're behind me, you're behind me. If you're not, that's no hard feelings. I just curious. And every single one of them looked at me at the same time and said, "We're in."
Love it.
That was
Yeah,
pretty cool. Every
that
single
is
one,
super cool.
yeah, and every single one of them works at Guitar Center, which is awesome because I bought a whole system for the band, a whole sound system for the band for I got a really good discount. Let's just say that they can get me the really good discounts there at Guitar Center. But and then I added here lately, I actually added another buddy of mine into the band, who 2 years ago we tried starting a band together. He actually had he'd got a hold of me and said he needed a lead singer and that he had a bass player and a drummer. And I was like, all right, I'll come out there and see. And we did a couple of practices, but the other guys just weren't into it as much. And no hard feelings, like don't matter to me. But they just weren't into it as much, so it just kind of faded out. But
Mhm.
him and I, ever since then, have been best friends, and we actually went to school together, but we never really hung out when we were in school and stuff. We were kind of two completely different people back then. But after we tried to start that band together, I mean, heck, we've been best friends since. I mean, he's like a brother to me. I'd do anything for him, and he'd do the same for me. And I always told him, I was like, when I get a band together, I'm gonna get you in there if we, if you can, if you want to, if you can do it. If we got a spot for you, he's like, you're in it. And
Great.
turns out, bass player, and I knew he could play bass, so I asked him. I was like, hey, I want you to be a bass player. And we had a practice in Fort Worth, and I told him, I was like, meet me out here. We might give you an instrument or something. He showed up. We gave him a bass, and he sat back there and played, and it just clicked together, and it was perfect. So, which I'm really happy about that. I like I said, I love my guys behind me. They support me really good. They're great musicians. They follow me well because I mess up so many times. It's funny. Like it is bad. I'll be up on stage. I told them we're gonna play this song one night, and I looked at him and told him I said, "Hey, we're gonna play this song," and which it was I think it was "Drinking Problem" by Midland, and I think I told him to play "Drinking Problem," and I started singing and I played "Burnout." I clicked on the song and I started playing "Burnout," and they're looking at me like, what's going on?" It's like you said, "Drink,"
Yeah, yeah.
and I'm looking at
Oh,
them. I was like, "No, this is how it's supposed to be played." And at the end, it finally clicked. I was like, "Oh, I told y'all drinking problem, didn't I?" They're like, "Yeah." I was like, "Well, good
well,
job, test."
that's okay. That's okay. Everybody's not perfect. So unfortunately, we're starting to run short on time, but I'm looking forward to some future. Are you good? Just real quick, are you going to be putting out a full album or an EP in the near future?
I will. My plan is I got a couple more songs that are recorded. That same thing I picked up out of Nashville. Um, and they're uh gonna be released. I don't know when I'm gonna release them yet. I'm
Hmm.
gonna do 2 more singles,
Cool.
and I think I'm gonna try to combine. So I'm gonna get like 6 singles, and then maybe get 6 new songs, like more of my original stuff that I've written.
Mhm.
Get all that recorded and going, and throw that together. So 6 new songs and 6 old songs, and just combine them together into an album. Is what I'm
Okay.
thinking. I don't know because I really don't know how all that stuff works, but that's kind of been my plan. And
Well,
everybody
it
said,
seems like, yeah, I think everything that you're doing is falling into place with all your stories, with your producer, with how your band came about. So, anyway, we look forward to great things in the future. We'll be following you and hopefully seeing you soon. Thank you so much, Chaser, for coming on
oh,
the podcast.
"Thank you."